So let's just start with how are you doing? It's good to speak to you again. How are things?
Yeah, great. There's a lot of things happening in a crypto market right now with the price going up and down because of how Fed is with the rates, or like what's the CPI index at the moment, and so on. So except for that, I'm fine, I guess.
Okay, yeah. So what are the Fed doing with the kind of CPI index at the moment? So just for those that don't know.
Sorry. So CPI index is the consumer price index, and it's basically how you measure inflation. So that thing going up means that the inflation is still not really curbed and not really stopped. So the Fed has to raise the rates for the loans, for the credits, and so basically that turns to having less money in the market. That's probably the easiest explanation of what's happening. And having less money in the market, meaning there are less degents in the market going into crypto, which in turn means that the price will go down.
Yeah, because there was the Fed, what's it called? Financial tightening or something, where they withdraw X amount of billions from the market every month to try and ease inflation. Is there any sign of that working?
So not really at the moment. And that's so I've read this analysis somewhere that actually there was a notion of how that inflation is really internal, and it's not really caused by whether Fed will print more money or not, or whether was that caused by, because we have the US printed a lot of money in 2021 because of the pandemics. They were, they're trying to have all those stimulus checks. Basically every country around the world, in Europe as well, in Asia, in other countries, were doing the same thing. But the argument was that was not the principal cause. The principal cause was a year before, and the whole supply chain being disrupted because of the pandemics, and now with the situation in Ukraine that's still going on, it's not going to lessen in any time soon. So the inflation will stay no matter what Fed will do. The problem really is how high will it go?
Do you have kind of like an idea, like where you wouldn't be surprised if it reached like 18% or something?
No, I mean, okay, I would be surprised if it goes beyond 20% because that's super high already. But yeah, at this stage, I don't know. On one side, I'm optimistic about the future, but I have this pessimistic side where I think we're going into a major crisis of like super inflation, like hyperinflation, like back to the 20s from the last century, where basically the stocks crashed, we had this Great Depression, and basically everything went to zero. So that's not off the table at the moment, I guess.
No. So it is looking kind of World War II reparations kind of area potentially.
Yeah, exactly.
So when people buy the dip and it just keeps dipping, that's
exactly
keep dipping and keep dipping and keep dipping.
Yeah, and then you basically panic at the end and sell everything for pennies. This is how. This is the standard. Like this is the classic strategy called buy high, sell low. Yeah,
that's trading completely based on. What's it called? The greed fear index. So like the opposite ends of the greed fear.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
People say, the price is really high, I'm going to buy when it goes up. And that's exactly when all of the big players are like, exactly. Not today.
Yep, exactly. So I guess in the markets like that, you have to have like strong conviction about what you're doing. That's why I'm more into the building mode. I watch the prices every day, but it won't influence me in any way. I mean, I'm watching that mostly for like whether I want to buy more ETH or like sell some ETH right now and do the simple stuff like that. But I'm not day trading in any way. I'm mostly trying to look at the analytics side of things, like how many wallets there are, like are people still trading with NFTs? What kind of collections are there and stuff like that?
Yeah, because you're really big on the kind of the NFT space with the big blue chip kind of NFTs. It kind of ties into a question that I had. Do you think that buying some of the not so blue chip NFTs at the moment, some of the new projects that are being built and released during this really strong downtrend, do you think they're worth it right now?
Yes, but it's super risky. I mean, okay, so maybe I don't even believe current blue chips are really blue chips in the sense like, well, blue chips are this term from going from the stock market, where you really have something that is of proven value over decades and existing with us. That's not really the case with NFTs, because even Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is probably the most, and CryptoPunks, that's the most two blue chip collections. CryptoPunks are fine probably because they're like the historical collection. They will always be the first. But for example, Bored Ape Yacht Club are not. And I'm not sure what will be the future. It really depends on the team, what they will build. It can very well collapse in the end. And but having said that, on the other hand, you will have new blue chips emerging. So for example, Azuki is a good example, right? Like Azuki was built just in January this year, and it's probably the newest blue chip in this sense.
So I remember we were speaking the other day about how this kind of transdimensional shift that we're going through from Web 2 to Web 3 is kind of like when the internet first came out in 1985 or so, and then Web 2 coming out in around 95, 98 kind of time. When those big massive companies like Yahoo was spending billions of dollars on individual companies just to completely crash when the bubble burst, and new companies like Google and Facebook with these phoenix companies are rising through the ashes. So do you think we're kind of in a very long-term view of that right now? Do you think some of these big players are really going to come down, and then new, better Web3 brands and companies and businesses are going to come out from the bottom?
Yeah, 100%. I think we're in the phase of like the .com bubble, and it burst right now. Like we're past the first curve, but probably in a bear market, like even if you look within the crypto market in the past, you had a lot of ICOs in 2017, 2018. Basically 99% of them failed miserably. But then some of them live to this day, kept on building, and they try. So it's still 1%. The same has happened with .com bubble, meaning that Amazon was there before Amazon was like 1998, if I remember correctly, something around that. So they were like before they raised a lot of capital. Then they stock totally crashed, and actually you basically had Amazon for pennies for like an extended period of time. But then they kept on building, and they basically rebuilt everything. And of course, right now Amazon is this massive company. Yeah. So the same thing could happen with NFT collections. But again, this is super risky because, like in any kind of new emerging technology, only like 1 to 5% will survive. If you think about it, then, for example, a good case is even the car industry in the US. I think that was like the beginning of the last century. So before Ford, GMT, and a bunch of other companies, there was like 2,000 or 3,000 car companies trying to build cars. But then they started to take one over, and basically there was this massive accumulation of power in the hands of just a couple of companies. Yeah. So that's another scenario. I mean, I'm not sure this will play out here because, but who knows? Like in Web 2 is totally dominated by a handful of companies.
Yeah, it's like Google, Facebook,
Amazon, basically.
Amazon,
you could probably go with Netflix, Spotify also, though Netflix right now is probably more, it's changing because you have HBO and Disney, which is doing pretty well also in the space.
Yeah, but Disney's up there. Disney. I'm not a fan of Netflix, you know. My partner absolutely adores Netflix when it comes to like just watching TV in general. I'm not I'm not a super fan of it. If I do it, it's like for an hour or so at the end of the day. I tried watching the new Grand Tour. Do you watch the Grand Tour? Do you watch on Amazon?
No, I haven't. No,
it's not as good as it used to be. It just made me think of that because we were talking about cars. So are you interested in cars much at all? I love my personal favorite car is the 67 GT 500. That's my personal favorite car of all time. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. I've got my model of it down there.
Do you have the real car too? Or
unfortunately not. It's
not yet.
The model, not
okay.
yet. Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. With
what's the market price for that? Like
the current market price for these cars, they go for a completely original one for 67. You're looking somewhere around 150 grand.
Okay.
But the electric version that I want was made by Charge.uk, which is an absolutely incredible company. They got permission from Ford to create, it's an exact replica in every way apart from it's fully electric, and that's about double the price. That's about 300 grand. But it's absolutely stunning. I saw it at Goodwood a couple of years ago or last year. Absolutely phenomenal car. Absolutely unbelievable. It's absolutely stunning. It looks amazing. It's good for the environment. It's one of those cars like can't remember which one it is, but the new electric Porsche actually cleans the air that it's driving around because
nice.
The exhaust of that electric.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really, really exciting. So go on, sorry.
No, yeah, sorry. So ask about whether I'm into the cars. Yes, unfortunately, not really. I drive occasionally, renting the cars for like going to like distances to like, for example, if I go skiing in Austria or something like that, then I rent a car basically for like a week or two, but that's it. I don't have a car. Like usually I just rent it when I need that one.
Yeah. I think even in any city, you don't really need a car to get around, do you? Because you're so close to like public transport. It's just not super necessary. Even here, like I live in a smaller town, pretty far from any city, but even here I'm like, I could just get the train, I could just get the bus. I really don't need to spend loads of money on a car. And they are expensive things to have, cars are. I know you work in AI and data science. Do you think that these are going to play a role in the transportation industry? Do you think it's like, how long do you think it's going to be until we've got a completely self-driving public transport?
Okay, so those are two questions basically.
Yeah.
The first one is yes, of course. Like you have already many companies, even at the basic level. Google Maps has right now a lot of machine learning because they want to optimize routes, and generally speaking, there are like a lot of hard problems which can be solved with data science or machine learning for the optimization stuff. So optimizing is really one of the key features when it comes to transportation, and there are like many problems to be solved. So I was doing basically just that with one of my startups previously. But the problem, so the problem with self-driving cars is much harder because you have this technical problems of making sure that the cars will drive by themselves and not cause any kind of disruption, not cause any kind of accidents. But then the problem is really the legislation, and that's even harder than the technology currently, because I think like you already have like pilot programs with buses. I don't remember where that was. Or was it like either like one of the Scandinavian countries or Japan, but they have already a bus with some of the villages connected through self-driving bus, which is super like great. I love the idea. But the problem is those were like secluded areas, and basically there's not much traffic there anyway. So the problem is much easier. You probably won't cause much disruption, but we still don't have a legislation, like regulatory basis for what happens when the bus drives over a person, like who's responsible for that, what happens then, and so on. So you don't really have those handbrakes in a way.
If you
that's the problem.
Yeah, there is. It's that like morality behind it, isn't it? If the car had a choice between, 3 children and 8 adults. Like, which way does it go
Exactly.
if it can't stop?
Yeah. And that's the and that's the real problem, because with like a self-driving car, especially if you have like great cameras installed, then basically you have to make this choice, because you can, for example, go, you're going into a crash, and you either can crash into those 3 kids in a back of like another car, or go and crash into a bus and basically kill 8 adults. And the choice is up to you, basically. So up to people coding and implementing machine learning models. And it's not clear what we should choose, because as people, we don't make those choices because it's all spontaneous. We don't think about the situations being real, and in a moment you just react based on the impulses, and nobody will convict you about whatever option you chose it because you felt that in the moment. And with a machine, that being completely resonated upon, like, it's really cold reasons that you have to give what's the best choice.
Mm-hmm. So in your experience, in your knowledge of machine learning, which way would you go? Which way would you point them? Which do you think? Is it save the children, or is it?
No, I don't know. No, it's really, I don't know. I imagine like a really dystopian future where I wouldn't like to live, but it's definitely possible that you would probably could probably compute what are the families of these children, what's the net worth of their parents, whether you get sued if you crash into the children, all the adults, and so on. But yeah, it would be probably possible at some point, but yeah, I wouldn't like to live in a future like that.
No, that is very, very dystopian. The kind of Hunger Games almost.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. That's why I like crypto, because I think crypto goes against those kind of dystopia, right? Like, you're trying to save some of the privacy that you lost during the Web 2 period, and basically trying to make everything, or at least as many things as possible, decentralized. Yeah. So there's not one organization and behind everything.
Yeah, and it's really, really good to see what crypto and really just Web3 is doing for the creator economy in general, with machine learning giving power to the data side of things, and then the actual decentralization aspect, which we spoke about in great length the other week.
Yeah,
giving young entrepreneurs, young creators, people who have previously been really stuffing the pockets of like Google and Facebook, all of these big tech, now have this opportunity to monetize their passions through the internet. And so my question is, with so many different cryptocurrencies being around and some of the big players like Bitcoin and Ethereum, do you think there's going to be one single crypto that's going to kind of dominate the online space? Or do you think it's going to continue being a collection of smaller, some large and then other smaller cryptos for the foreseeable future?
I think both, in a sense, meaning that you probably would have like major coins. Like right now, Bitcoin and Ethereum are probably like the top 2, and then you have nothing, and then only more coins like Solana, I guess BSC or stuff like that. But you also have thousands of like much smaller coins, and those have a place too, because in the end, you can think about coins as being like a natural fuel to any kind of community. If you want to build a community, then there has to be some kind of incentive. And if you can have your own coin or any kind of token, that can be an NFT, that can be just a classical cryptocurrency, then basically you're giving this incentive, like the monetary incentive that you have full control of. And I think that's the most powerful thing about crypto, and that's not going away. So my bet is on like both having small coins, medium coins, and basically those large behemoths like Ethereum and Bitcoin.
So do you think that crypto could take over the kind of stocks and shares market? This is way in the future. It's not going to be happening over the next few years, maybe not even in the next 5 to 10 years. But do you think that shift is coming? That kind of shift from a centralized market to completely decentralized?
Probably yes, but it will be in a different way than in a way that's coming with CBDC, right? Mm-hmm. Like we have talked about those centralized currencies, because from the perspective of the central banks or like governments, it's useful to have entirely online cash that you can control and you can see where that's going. Mm-hmm. So if you have that, then the next natural step is actually to put everything that you have on that cash, so on the online currency. So you can imagine that you can have all the stocks basically built on top of that, real estate and stuff like that. So you will have basically just government-owned cryptocurrencies. Yeah, it will be, from the perspective of the user, that will still look like cash, and it won't change much, but the technology will change significantly.
Because I know the CBDC is gearing more towards the China social credit system, where it's a programmable currency that you can't buy X amount of Big Macs, or you can't buy this many beers, and that personally terrifies me. So
yeah, that's scary. Especially and the scary part is also that you have the expiry date. I don't know if you heard about that. Like you have 6 months to spend this amount of cash, because otherwise it's going to zero. Like you have, that's super scary.
Yeah. And it's this kind of centralized power that crypto is really fighting, isn't it? Like that's what, as well with the centralized power of governments and companies owning all of this wealth and completely owning every single part of our really monetizable lives, everything from data to content to social interaction. Now, I think it's more important than ever for people to really open their kind of eyes to what's happening. So if you could give someone some advice to kind of get into crypto, or was thinking about taking their finances or their data into their hands, which way would you point them?
I would begin probably with just playing around, like installing MetaMask and understanding what does on-chain means and how you really own the crypto you have. Because if you just use centralized exchanges like Binance, Kraken, or OKX or whatever it is, then it's still pretty much the same as with the banks. Like you don't really have control over your crypto to the full extent. So I guess the best way is to play around with creating your own wallet, and probably also buying a hardware wallet. So Ledger, Trezor, stuff like that, trying to install that, understand how that works. I think those are the basic things right now to be done. So trying to understand how you can have this 0.001 ETH on your own wallet in totally decentralized way.
Yeah. So I know Binance. I know Binance has kind of been in the firing line a little bit recently, through being a centralized exchange claiming to be decentralized. What exchanges do you recommend for a new person to use that will give them the best kind of understanding, the best training, and the best options within these markets?
To be honest, any kind of exchange is fine, or one of the biggest. So either I like Binance, OKX, FTX. I use each 3 of them regularly, and a bunch of other exchanges as well, depending on but when it comes to just buying major crypto, no matter what you use is fine. You don't have to, you just pick one. Probably Binance is the biggest. So you probably could go with Binance, or if you're in the US, then FTX is probably the most regulated one, or of course Coinbase. I don't like Coinbase that much because it's too centralized in a way, but Coinbase is fine. When it comes to user experience, Coinbase is really great.
Yeah, super simple. Coinbase is a really super simple app, which I think is necessary, especially for new technology. Looking at when tech really started to emerge, and you had Microsoft, which is obviously one of the biggest companies in the world at the moment, which was all about programming. Everything's interchangeable. It's all done by the user. there's a million different ways to get to the same place. And then you had Apple, which is like the biggest company in the world now, that just completely simplified everything, really took over that end-to-end control. And it even though it's on the more expensive side of things, it is still one of the most purchased products, tech products. There we go. Tech products that the world has got.
Yeah, because Apple is super simple, right? Like if you buy a Mac, I love MacBooks. I like for a very long time I was only buying PCs or like using Windows or Linux. And then once I tried, and I was saying like, no, I'm never going to buy a MacBook. And then I tried MacBook. It was hard at first because it was a little bit different than what I was used to. But then it's just so simple. And also if you have like an iPhone or an iPad, the interconnectivity between those is like unmatchable. And it's also like the quality is just great. And people want simplicity. And that's the problem with crypto right now, because it's just not simple. Like in the end, you have to go through all those steps. And even you could probably start with Coinbase, really, but it's not really the full crypto experience, because the full crypto experience is having your own wallet and not being reliant on any kind of centralized entity. So installing MetaMask or installing some other wallet if you're going after other blockchains. But definitely if someone is starting with crypto, then going this route of Coinbase, Binance or FTX, and then transferring some of the funds from there to one of the wallets, and probably installing MetaMask and then playing around with MetaMask. That's probably the easiest thing.
Amazing. MetaMask is probably one of the biggest online wallets at the moment. It is. Like, I think the statistics I've seen is that 70% of transactions on Ethereum are going through MetaMask, actually. So in a way, Ethereum is centralized from MetaMask, but that's like not real centralization, because it's super easy to replace that with another wallet if MetaMask were ever to do something strange. Okay. Like all of a sudden be attacked by exactly. Somehow someone got in,
like push you like strange transactions to sign then.
Yeah, I know we spoke briefly about wallets last time we spoke, and how Ethereum is somewhat centralized through MetaMask. Are we expecting to see a massive influx of new wallets coming into the space over the next couple of years? And do you think that the majority will fail, or do you think that creating wallets and having more variety and options to choose from when it comes to wallets is a better thing because it lowers that centralization?
Yeah, it's definitely a great thing, but probably in the end we can only have like 2-3 players in the space. Like it's super, like in the end, it's a winner takes all scenario here. Yeah. Especially that if you create a product that is very easy to use. And that's still not the case with MetaMask. I mean, MetaMask is doing awesome recently because they added a lot of information. They're trying to tell you what kind of transaction you're signing, and maybe that you should check whether that's the contract you're really signing. But the problem is that from the perspective of the casual users, they don't even want to think about that, and they don't want to think about whether signing this transaction will mean that you transfer over all your ETH or all your NFTs to a particular address. And that's still the case with Ethereum and using MetaMask. And I guess having a wallet that is able to analyze some of the transactions, or maybe also do stuff like, it's a matter of standardization in the end. Like you want to have standard contracts being told by someone that this contract is safe, that there was an audit, that they can say that this is safe. Nothing will happen if you mint this NFT. Because like, especially within the NFT space, there was like this huge problem with so many hacks, because you have this scam collections that the only goal was, if you start minting, then basically you're actually giving access to all your NFTs. Like within the mint transaction, there was like the set approval for all, which for allow the scammers to take your most valuable NFTs or your ETH or stuff like that. And this is like the kind of stuff we want to avoid in the future.
Yeah. So I know this is what's been putting a lot of people off kind of crypto as a whole, isn't it? Is that the complexity of it, because being in this space, we can say, oh, it's not super complicated. It's easier than it sounds once you kind of know what you're doing. But from a completely fresh user's perspective, it is massively daunting looking at this thing that I've got to learn about this thing called a smart contract. And now it's an online wallet, but my Monzo doesn't work that way. And I don't know why this person's spending £1 million on a picture of a monkey. There's so much to learn about it. So it's almost like someone just needs to come up with a wallet that can read and put in really simple forms what the contract is. Like, this is how much, this is why. Because I know MetaMask don't do that. It's you just kind of look at it. It's like, okay, yes. Do you want to give this wallet access? I think that's the question they ask, isn't it? And then you just met this number, you're like, oh, I don't know. Well, what are they going to be able to do, kind of thing? And if you don't do that due diligence, then obviously you can really get met with some struggle.